The night Dara Adeyemi discovered that the man she had been hired to protect was the same man who had ordered her uncle's silence. She was standing in a parking garage with a gun she had not asked for pressed into the small of her back. Let that land for a moment. She had walked into the underground level of the Gangnam Nexus Hotel at 7:43 p.m. carrying nothing but her conference badge and her phone, and within 6 minutes, she was standing between a black car and a concrete pillar with the cold, unmistakable pressure of a firearm against her spine. And the man whose car she had just saved was watching her from 10 feet away with the expression of someone who has just recalibrated everything he thought he knew about the evening. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. The story does not start with a gun. It starts, as the most important stories do, with a voice. She heard him before she saw him. She was in the car park on the second level, standing near the stairwell door, finishing a call with her sister in Lagos, the kind of call that starts about birthday cakes and ends somehow about everything that has ever mattered, when the voice came up from below. Not words, not at first, the shape of a voice. Low, contained, with the particular gravity of someone who has learned to speak at a volume that requires people to lean in, because requiring people to lean in is its own kind of authority. She heard it through the acoustic geometry of the parking structure, which bent sound in strange ways, folding around concrete pillars and giving it back change. And she heard it and felt something in her chest that was not quite recognition and not quite warning, but something that lived between the two. She finished the call with her sister. She said, "Don't let Mama forget the flowers." She hung up. She stood at the stairwell door and she looked. Below her, one level down, a black car, long, attended by two men who stood in the specific posture of people whose job is to be the space between their employer and the world. A third man leaning against the east pillar, 12 feet from the car, wearing a jacket that fit badly at the right shoulder. A fourth man at the driver's door. And in the back seat of the car, still, presumably unaware that the man at the east pillar had been standing in the same position for 22 minutes, and had not once looked at his phone, and had not once looked at the entrance ramp, and had spent 22 minutes looking only at the car. Dara Adeyemi had been doing conflict resolution work for 8 years. Before that, she had spent 3 years working for her Uncle Collins, who ran a logistics company in Lagos and who had taught her, in the specific way that men who have survived complicated industries teach the people they love, to read the difference between a person who is waiting and a person who is waiting to do something. The body language was different. The quality of the stillness was different. A person who is simply waiting keeps some portion of themselves available to the world. They check their phone. They shift their weight. They let their eyes wander. A person who is waiting to do something becomes a point. Every part of them converges on a single intention. The man at the east pillar was a point. She was not involved in this situation. She was at the Nexus Hotel for a conflict resolution conference. 2 days of panels and breakout sessions, and the specific professional networking that she had become skilled at, the kind where you collected business cards and remembered names and built the web of relationships that her work required. She was not in security. She was not armed. She was not, in any reasonable interpretation of her job description, responsible for the black car or the men attending it or the occupant whose voice she had heard from one level up and whose identity she did not yet know. She moved anyway. She moved because her Uncle Collins had taught her that the moment you identify a thing that is about to go wrong, and do nothing is the moment you become responsible for what follows. He had said this about business and about life and about the specific, recurring situations that arose in the logistics world when money moved in ways that attracted the wrong kind of interest. He had said, "Dara, the bystander is never really a bystander. You're always either in the room or you have left the room. There is no third option." She took the stairs. She came out on the lower level. She walked. Not quickly. Quickly was wrong. Quickly was noise, with the purposeful, unhurried pace of someone who knows where she is going and has every right to be there. She walked past the east pillar. She walked close enough to the man to confirm the jacket, to confirm the stillness, to confirm the specific way his right hand was positioned at his side, slightly forward, slightly ready. She kept walking. She reached the black car. She stopped in front of the rear door, between the car and the direct line from the east pillar, and she knocked on the window. The window went down. She looked at the man inside. He looked at her. She had a moment, one moment, the duration of a breath, to take him in. Late, 30s, dark-suited, the face of a man who had made peace with who he was a long time ago, and had stopped requiring anyone else to make the same peace. Eyes that were very dark and very direct, and currently assessing her with thoroughness that suggested this was not an unfamiliar activity for him. "Get in the car," she said. "Right now." The man at the east pillar has been standing in the same spot for 22 minutes, and he is not a hotel guest. A pause. 1 heartbeat. 2. "Get in," she said again. He got in. She got in with him. The door closed. The car moved. Behind them, as the car took the ramp toward the street, she heard the sound of the man at the east pillar losing his position, the sound of a body in motion that had expected a different kind of motion and had not gotten it. She heard his voice briefly, saying something sharp and urgent into a phone. She heard the car's doors lock with the specific pneumatic sound of very expensive car engineering. She felt, very briefly and very completely, the specific physical sensation of a thing that could have happened and did not. "Who are you?" the man beside her said. "Dara Adeyemi," she said, "conflict resolution consultant. I'm here for a conference." A silence. The car moved through the Gangnam traffic. "You saw him," the man said. "The jacket fit badly at the right shoulder," she said. "He had something under it, and he'd been standing still for 22 minutes watching your car. That combination is not subtle if you know what you're looking for. And you know what you're looking for. My uncle taught me," she said. "He was in logistics, in Lagos, complicated industry." Another silence. She was looking at the city through the car window. Gangnam at night, all glass and light, and the specific density of a place that has decided to be many things at once. She was not looking at the man beside her. She was giving him time to assess the situation at his own pace, which was a technique she used in mediation rooms when the parties needed to arrive at their own understanding before the conversation could begin. "My name is Pak Seong-hyun," he said. She had heard the name. She had heard it in the same way you hear certain names in certain industries. Not because you've been introduced, but because the name has weight in rooms you've worked in. She had been in Seoul for 2 months, on a rotating consulting contract that brought her here 3 times a year, and she had heard his name twice. Once in a conversation between 2 businessmen at a hotel bar who had stopped talking when they noticed her, and once from a contact at the Korean Chamber of Commerce who had said it with the specific tone of someone naming a weather system. "I know who you are," she said. "Approximately." "Approximately," he repeated, something in his voice that was not quite amusement but was adjacent to it. "I know your name and your general professional category," she said. "I don't know the details." "The details," he said, "are not generally available." "I didn't ask for them," she said. He looked at her then. She was still looking at the city. She felt his attention the way you feel it when someone looks at you with a kind of full focus that is uncommon enough to be physical, a warmth in the air, a change in the texture of the silence. "Where can I take you?" he said. "The hotel," she said. "I have a panel at 8 tomorrow morning." "A conflict resolution panel," he said. "Yes." "You resolve conflicts," he said. "Professionally?" "I do." "And yet you walked into one tonight." She looked at him then. His face was doing something careful. The thing that a very controlled person's face does when it is, against the expectations of its owner, genuinely engaged. Not performing engagement. Actually engaged. "I didn't walk into it," she said. "I walked past it." "There's a difference." He said nothing for a moment. Then, "Yes, there is." The car took them back to the hotel. At the entrance, he stopped her before she got out. Not physically, not by touching her, but by the specific quality of his presence, the way some people can hold you in a moment without any contact at all. "Have dinner with me," he said. "Tomorrow, after your panel." She looked at him. She thought about approximately in the general professional category, and the things she knew and the things she was choosing not to know. "Why?" she said. "Because," he said, and this was the first time she saw it, the thing that would dismantle her careful, professional, appropriately distanced understanding of the next 3 months. "You're the first person in a very long time who has done something for me without being asked and without wanting anything in return. And I find I don't know what to do with that." She considered this. "I'll have dinner with you," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "You tell me about the man at the east pillar." she said. The full version, not the managed one. He looked at her for a long moment. All right, he said. She got out. She did not look back. Behind her, she heard the car pull away, and she stood in the Gangnam night and thought about Uncle Collins and the thing he had said about bystanders in rooms and the third option that does not exist. She thought, you are either in the room or you have left it. She understood very much in the room. She did not sleep that night, not in the dramatic way of someone kept awake by a single thunderous revelation, in the quieter, more exhausting way of someone whose mind has received too much information of too high in importance and cannot identify which piece to set down first. She lay in the hotel room that was 41 floors below where they had eaten dinner and 41 floors above the parking garage where everything had started, and she looked at the ceiling and thought about Collins. She thought about Collins the way you think about someone who is gone, when the world suddenly produces evidence that they were connected to more of it than you knew. Collins, who had been 61 years old when he died and had looked, in the last 2 years of his life, like a man of 75. Collins, who had still gone into the office, who had still answered the phone on the first ring when she called, who had still, with the specific, committed optimism of someone who refuses to let a difficult situation have the last word, talked about what the company would do when things stabilized. Things had not stabilized. Collins had died in April in the office, which was the way he would have chosen to go if he had been asked to choose, which he had not been. She thought about what Seong-hyun had said. I sent a man to your mother's house 2 weeks ago, before she walked into the parking garage, before 8 seconds in a structure that smelled of concrete and the memory of other people's car exhausts. The honoring of Collins's death had been in motion before she had entered this story, and she was now, in the way of things that connect across time, inside the story that had always been connected to Collins's story, and the question of what to do with that was not a question she was going to answer tonight. She thought about what Collins would have said. He would have said, Dara, the world is not large. It is a village that has dressed itself up in the costume of a world. Every significant connection in your life is 6 steps from every other significant connection. The question is never whether the connections exist. The question is whether you are paying enough attention to see them. She had been paying attention. 8 years of paying attention professionally in rooms where the attention was the instrument, and still this had surprised her, which meant either the connection was unusually deep or she had been so busy paying professional attention that she had missed the personal. She thought it was probably both. She got up at 5:47 a.m. She made coffee in the hotel room's machine, which was adequate without being good. And she sat at the small desk by the window and looked at Seoul in the pre-dawn gray. The city was quieter than she had seen it. Not quiet. Seoul was never quiet, but the nighttime amplitude had lowered, and what remained was the city's working self rather than its performed self. She called her mother back. Her mother answered on the second ring. Her mother was always awake before dawn. She said it was a habit she had built during the years when her husband worked early shifts and she had gotten up with him, and had never stopped getting up at the same time after he was gone, because the body builds its rhythms around people it loves and does not always unlearn them. Tell me everything, her mother said. She told her. Not everything. She did not tell her mother about the parking garage or the gun pressed against her spine or the 3 attempts in 18 months, because some things you protect the people you love from, not because they can't handle them, but because handling them would require energy better spent elsewhere. But she told her mother about Seong-hyun, about the network and the transformation and the records his father had kept and the decision he had made to honor the debts before he knew he would ever meet anyone connected to them. Her mother was quiet for a long time. Collins always said, her mother began, then stopped, then started again. He used to say that the debt that eats you is not the one you owe. It's the one that's owed to you. Because the debt you owe, you have some control over. You can pay it or not pay it. The one owed to you, you are at the mercy of someone else's conscience. And someone else's conscience came, Dara said. Yes, her mother said. 20 years late. Does that matter? Dara said. A long pause. To Collins? I think it would have mattered more than the money, her mother said. Not the timing. The fact that someone, somewhere, looked at the record and said, this is wrong and I'm going to make it right. Collins would have said that the world still works. He always needed to believe that. She held the phone and looked at the pre-dawn city and thought about the world still working, about the specific, unlikely mechanism of it, about a network boss in Seoul whose father had made decisions that had cost a logistics man in Lagos his company and his health, and whose son had found the records and decided that the debt was just to settle even though the law would not have required it, and had set the settlement in motion, and had then, in the specific, improbable way of things that are built and not accidental, walked into the same story she was already in. "Mama," she said. "Yes." Collins would have said, "He's the right kind," she said. Seong-hyun, he would have said, "That one's worth the work." Another long pause. And then her mother said, in the direct, practical register of a woman who has lived long enough to know that the heart is also a practical matter, "Then do the work, Dara." Collins would say, "Stop standing at the door and go inside." She smiled. She looked at the city getting lighter. "Yes," she said, "I think you would." She hung up. She finished the coffee. She showered and dressed and went down to the hotel lobby, where she found Seong-hyun already there, which surprised her, which perhaps should not have surprised her, sitting in a chair near the entrance with 2 cups of coffee and the specific expression of a man who has also not slept and has decided that the not sleeping is better spent in motion than in a hotel room. He stood when she came out of the elevator. He handed her the coffee. He said, "I wasn't sure you'd still be here." "I said I would be," she said. "You did," he said. "I was asking a different question." She looked at him. She understood the different question. After last night, after everything that had arrived in the conference room and everything she had taken up to the 41st floor and spent until dawn with, was she still here in a way that mattered, not the physical way, but the other one? "Yes," she said. "I'm still here." He held her gaze, the underneath expression. "All right," he said. "Then I want to show you something." He took her to Incheon, not the airport, the port district, the old part, where his mother had grown up. He drove them himself, which she noted, because she had not previously seen him drive, had seen him only in the back of the black car with the attending men. He drove with the focused, competent ease of someone who had learned to drive before he learned to have drivers and had never fully stopped. The port district in the early morning was a specific combination of industrial and intimate that port cities do uniquely well. The smell of the yellow sea and the fish markets and the specific exhaust of vessels that spend their lives between one place and another. The light was flat and gray and beautiful in the way of light that doesn't try to be anything other than what it is. He took her to a street of narrow houses near the water. He parked. He got out and she got out and he stood on the pavement and looked at a house. Small. The kind of small that has been lived in fully rather than merely occupied, with a blue door that had recently been repainted and window boxes that were, in the November cold, holding nothing but the memory of summer flowers. "She grew up here," he said. She stood beside him. The cold came off the water, and the city noise was different here. Lower, more horizontal. The noise of a place that has been making the same sounds for 100 years. She always said you could understand a person completely if you knew their port, he said. She meant it literally. The port they came from. The place where things arrived and left. She said it made people a specific way. Port people understood that nothing stays permanently. That everything is in transit. That the work is not to hold things in place, but to make sure the important things know how to find their way back. She looked at the blue door. She thought about Lagos, which was also a port city, which was also a place where everything was in transit, which had made her mother and Collins and herself in the specific way that port cities make people. "My grandmother was from the coast," she said, "near Badagry. She used to say that the sea teaches you 2 things, that you are small, and that small things can move large ones if they know where push." He looked at her. "That's exactly what my mother would have said," he said, in different words. They stood at the house with the blue door and the November cold and the yellow sea smell, and said nothing for a while, because some moments have enough in them without the addition of words. On the drive back to Seoul, she said, "Tell me about the transformation, the full version, what it looks like." He told her. He told her about the 8 years of slow, deliberate work, the legitimate businesses built alongside the network, drawing resources and attention, and eventually the center of gravity toward the legal side, the property development company, the logistics arm, which was, she noticed, not incidental. He had built a logistics company, a legitimate one, as part of the transformation, as if he had understood without knowing why that logistics was a form of making amends. The investment portfolio that now generated more revenue than the network's traditional operations, the specific, careful, legally watertight architecture he had built around each component, so that the transition, when it came, would be a natural evolution rather than a rupture. "You've been building this for 8 years, she said. "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." She looked at the road. "At Seoul approaching." "That's why you're tired," she said. "Not the 3 attempts. Not Youngwoo. 8 years of building something you can't fully explain to anyone, while also running the thing you're trying to transform." He was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said. "That's exactly it." "You don't have to do it alone anymore," she said. He glanced at her, the glance of someone who has heard something and is checking whether he heard it correctly. "I'm a conflict resolution consultant," she said. "My specific expertise is in transitions, organizational, cultural, structural transitions. I've overseen 12 major corporate and community transitions in 8 years. I've worked with companies that were restructuring operations that were significantly more complicated than what you described." She paused. "And I'm not going to manage this. I'm also someone who is invested in this particular outcome in a way that is not purely professional." "Because of Collins," he said. "Because of Collins," she said. "And because of you." He drove. The city arrived around them. He did not say anything for a while, and the silence was the good kind, the kind that is content in it rather than absence. Then he said, "My mother also said, she used to say this about the business, about the network, about everything my father had built. She said, the thing is not the thing. The building is not the building. The people are the building. The thing is only as real as the people who decide to inhabit it." She looked at him. "I want you to inhabit it," he said. "This thing I'm building. I want you inside it, not as a consultant with defined scope and a defined duration, but as—" He stopped. He found the word. "As someone who has decided to be there." She looked at the road ahead, at the city that had been hers for 2 months and was, she understood, about to become something different. Not a rotation, not a contract, but a choice she was making with full knowledge of what it contained. "I've decided," she said. "Yes," he said. "Yes," she said. The dinner was at the hotel's private dining level, 41 floors up, with the Han River visible below and the city arranged beneath them in its nighttime geometry of light and intention. He was already seated when she arrived. He stood when she came in, a small formality, the kind that says, "I was raised to treat the entry of a person as an event worth acknowledging." She sat down. She looked at him across the table, in the controlled light of the dining room, without the urgency of a parking garage and a jacket that fit badly and a 22-minute vigil. She could see him more completely. He was older than she had initially registered. The mid-30s impression from the car was revised upward. The lines at the corners of his eyes and the specific, settled quality of his authority suggested someone who had been exactly who he was for long enough that who he was had stopped being effortful. He was also, she noted with a professional detachment she was actively maintaining, exceptionally physically present, not in the way of people who are handsome and know it. He did not carry himself like someone who has been told he is good-looking. He carried himself like someone who has learned that his size and his presence are instruments, and has spent considerable time learning to use them at the right volume. "The man at the East Pillar," she said, before the menus arrived. "You said you would tell me." "His name is Lee Bong-chul," Seong-hyun said. "He works for my cousin. My cousin's name is Cho Young-woo. Young-woo and I have," he paused, selecting a word with the care of someone who understands that words in this context carry legal and personal weight simultaneously. "Competing positions on the future of our family's business." "The business," she said. "You know approximately what the business is," he said. "I know approximately," she agreed. "Then I won't insult you by using words that don't describe it accurately," he said. "The PAC network has been operating in Seoul and Busan for 23 years. My father built it. He died 4 years ago and left it to me. Young-woo believes it should have gone to him and has been making that argument with increasing creativity for the last 18 months. Tonight's creativity being Lee Bong-chul," she said. "Tonight's creativity being Lee Bong-chul," he agreed. She looked at him. Is this the first time? No. How many times? He met her eyes. 3, he said, in 18 months. She held this. 3 attempts in 18 months. The arithmetic of that, the specific, exhausting, accumulated weight of being a person whose life has been targeted 3 times and who has to keep moving through the world as if the world is not trying to remove him from it. Why don't you? She stopped. She knew why. Some things didn't have clean resolutions. Some situations required living inside them rather than solving them. Because Young-woo is family, he said quietly, and because the resolution that would end the attempts would cost something I'm not yet willing to pay. He looked at the Han River below. My mother asked me, before she died, to keep the family intact. She understood what the business was. She knew what it required. She still asked. How long ago? She said. 7 years. He looked back at her. She was from Incheon. She grew up near the port. She used to say, she said you could always tell the quality of a person by whether they kept the promises that cost them something. He paused. I have been trying to keep the promise. Dara sat with this. She sat with a specific portrait of a man who had inherited a complicated empire and a mother's request and was spending his days navigating between the two, and she thought about Uncle Collins, who had said something similar, not about empires, but about the specific daily cost of keeping faith with people who are gone and cannot see whether you are keeping it. You're tired, she said. He looked at her sharply, not offended, surprised, as if the observation had arrived from a direction he hadn't anticipated. I'm not saying that as a judgment, she said. I'm saying it because it's visible. You're carrying something that's been getting heavier for 18 months, and you're still standing up straight under it, which is impressive, but impressive is not the same as sustainable. A silence, long enough to hold something. You do this professionally, he said. Read the person under the situation. I do, she said, but you don't need to be a professional to see it. You just need to be paying attention. Are you paying attention to me? He said. The voice had changed registers, not the formal dinner voice, not the managed professional voice. Something underneath. She looked at him directly. Yes, she said. I am. The food arrived. They ate. They talked. Not about the network. Not about Young-woo. Not about the East Pillar or the jacket or the 3 attempts in 18 months. They talked about Incheon, where his mother was from, and about Lagos, where she was from, and about the specific quality of port cities. The way they breed people who understand that the world is larger than the place they were born and smaller than the sea. She told him about her work. Not the summary version. Not the version she gave at conference panels. But the actual version. What it was like to sit in a room with 2 parties who had stopped being able to hear each other and try to build, out of the rubble of the broken communication, something functional enough to move through. She told him about the hardest case she had worked. A community in the Niger Delta, a petroleum company. 12 years of mutual grievance compressed into a series of 3-day sessions that had left her, at the end, feeling as though she had been wrung out like a cloth and then hung up to dry. He listened with the quality of attention she had noticed in the car. Complete, unhurried, the listening of someone who is actually following the geography rather than waiting for the summary. You believe people can be reached, he said, when she had finished. I believe most people can, she said. I believe the ones who can are rarer than we think, and the ones we get up on too early are more common than we'd like to admit. What about the ones who have made choices that? He stopped. He tried again. What about people who have organized their lives around structures that? He stopped again. He looked at her. What about me? He said, simply, without the architecture. She held his gaze. What about you? She said. Do you think I can be reached? The question landed in the room and sat there. She understood that he was not asking her to evaluate his soul. He was asking something more specific. Whether the version of him that was currently sitting across the dinner table, tired and carrying his mother's promise and 3 attempts in 18 months, was the only version available. Whether the structure he had built his life inside was the permanent structure. I think, she said slowly, that you came to dinner with a conference attendee you met in a parking garage. I think you told me the full version when I asked for it. I think you've been keeping a promise for 7 years at considerable personal cost. She paused. I think people who can't be reached don't do any of those things. He looked at her for a long moment. "Have dinner with me again," he said. "Tomorrow, I have another panel. After the panel." She looked at him. The professional distance. The 3 centimeters. The appropriate space between a conflict resolution consultant and a man whose name reorganized rooms. After the panel, she said, she should tell you what happened in the weeks that followed. Because the weeks that follow were the architecture of everything that came after, and the architecture matters. The conference ended. She stayed in Seoul. This was not, strictly speaking, necessary. Her contract had a defined scope and a defined duration, and the defined duration had concluded. But she had a standing relationship with the Korean Chamber of Commerce that could be extended, and she extended it. And she told herself that the extension was professional, and she believed approximately 60% of this. Seong-hyun called on the 3rd morning after the conference ended. Not about dinner. He said, "I have a situation, a specific conflict. I need someone who reads rooms. Is that something you're available for?" She said, "Tell me about the situation." He told her about Young-woo, the full version, not the dinner version, not the managed version, but a complete picture of 18 months of escalating pressure and 3 attempts and the family business and his mother's dying request. He told her about the pact network structure, the territories, the alliances, the legal operations that had been growing over the last 8 years as he had been, quietly and without announcing it, moving the network center of gravity toward legitimacy. He told her that Young-woo's opposition was not simply ambition, but a specific, strategic fear. If the network became legitimate, Young-woo lost the leverage that his position inside the illegitimate structure gave him. Young-woo needed the network to stay what it was because that was the only world in which Young-woo's particular skills had value. She listened. She took notes. She said, "What do you actually want to resolve?" "I want," he said. And this was the first time she heard the underneath register in his voice, the one that arrived when the controlled architectural quality of his public cell had been set down to build something that my mother could have been proud of. "I want to run something that doesn't require me to keep looking at parking garages. He stopped. "I want to stop being tired." "Then we start with Young-woo," she said, "not as a threat to be managed, as a person with a need that is currently being expressed as opposition. What does Young-woo actually need?" "Power," Seong-hyun said. "Under the power," she said. "What's under power?" A long silence. She waited. She had learned, over 8 years, that the silence after this question was almost always productive if you were patient enough to let it run. Recognition. Seong-hyun said finally. He was the older cousin. He believed the business should have come to him. "My father chose me because..." He stopped. "Because he believed I would do something different with it. Build something." Young-woo has spent 4 years being the person who was not chosen. "So the thing he needs," she said, "is not the network. It's acknowledgement, a role that says, you matter, you are seen." He's not going to accept. "Not yet," she said. "People don't accept the thing they need when they're still fighting for the thing they think they need. The work is the middle. Moving someone from what they think they need to what they actually need. That's the job." He was quiet. "You make it sound manageable." "I make it sound like work," she said. "Which it is. Hard work, but manageable, yes." A pause. And then, quietly, in the underneath register, "Will you help me?" She paused. She thought about the parking garage and the dinner and the 30 minutes in a car and what it meant to be in a room versus having left it. "Yes," she said. "I'll help you." They met Young-woo for the first time on a Thursday, in a conference room in Mapo-gu that she had chosen specifically, neutral ground, no home territory advantage for either party, the kind of room that was generic enough to feel equally foreign to everyone in it. She had asked for the meeting to be just the 3 of them, no lawyers, no associates, no one whose presence would require the parties to perform rather than speak. Young-woo arrived first. He was younger than she'd expected, late 20s, with Seong-hyun's bone structure, but without the settled quality, without the peace with himself that Seong-hyun had built over years of being exactly who he was. Young-woo had the specific restlessness of someone who's been fighting for something for so long that the fighting has become the identity. And he looked at Dara when she introduced herself with a frank, assessing look of a man who's been told there will be a mediator and has decided that mediators are an obstacle to be managed. You're the conflict resolution consultant, he said. I am, she said. Seong-hyun hired you. I'm working with both of you, she said. That's how this works. I'm not on anyone's side. Everyone's on someone's side, Young-woo said. Then, I'm on the side of the outcome, she said, which is a situation that works for both of you. That's the only outcome I'm invested in. He looked at her for a moment with the assessing look. Then he sat down. Seong-hyun arrived 4 minutes later. He came in with the specific quality of someone who prepared themselves for a difficult room and has arrived ready. He nodded at Young-woo. Young-woo nodded back. The nod of two people who have known each other their entire lives and are currently the obstacle to each other's preferred future. She ran the session for 2 hours. It was not a breakthrough session. She had learned, over 8 years, to be suspicious of breakthrough sessions because breakthroughs that arrived too quickly were usually performed rather than real. What the 2 hours produced was something more valuable than a breakthrough. It produced the first honest exchange the two men had had in 18 months. Not honest about the network. They weren't there yet, but honest about the thing underneath it. At the 40-minute mark, when the formal positions had been stated and the ritual opposition had been performed, she said to Young-woo, "Tell me about the day your uncle told you his decision." Young-woo looked at her, then at Seong-hyun, then back at her. "That's not what we're here to discuss." "It's exactly what we're here to discuss," she said. "Everything else is the surface. That day is the foundation. We can't build on the surface if the foundation isn't stable." A long silence. Young-woo's jaw set. She let the silence run. Seong-hyun sat across the table and did not feel it, which she noted he had learned, somehow, the discipline of the pause. He called me into his office. Young-woo said, finally, quietly, with the specific, effortful quality of words that had been kept in for a long time. He sat me down. He told me he had made his decision about the succession. He told me it was Seong-hyun. He said he stopped. He looked at the table. He said he knew I was capable. He said he trusted my capability. And then he chose someone else. "What did you hear?" she said, when he said that. Young-woo looked up. "What?" "When he said, 'I know you're capable. I trust your capability.' What did you hear under the words?" A very long silence. "I heard, but not capable enough," Young-woo said. "I heard, capable enough to use, not capable enough to lead." Seong-hyun, across the table, had gone very still. She could see him doing something with the information, absorbing it, processing it, measuring it against 18 months of escalating conflict to see if it fit the shape of what he had been fighting. "Did he say that?" she said to Young-woo. "Did he say the words 'not capable enough'?" "No," Young-woo said. "But you heard it." "Yes." She let that sit. She let it sit for a full minute, which was a long time in a room where two men were sitting with 18 months of damage between them. Then she said, "Seong-hyun, what did your father tell you about his decision?" Seong-hyun looked at her, then at Young-woo, then back at her. He said, "Young-woo was a better strategist," he said. He said, "Young-woo's instincts for the business were sharper than mine." He said he was choosing me because he believed I was going to take the business somewhere it had never been, and he needed someone for that who... He stopped. "Who what?" she said. "Who was willing to lose the thing it was in order to become the thing it could be?" Seong-hyun said. He said Young-woo loved the business too much to transform it, that it would cost him too much. He said I was willing to grieve the loss of it in exchange for what came after. Young-woo was looking at Seong-hyun. She watched Young-woo's face do something she had seen faces do in mediation rooms. The specific, disorienting movement of belief that has been held for years beginning to shift on its foundations. He said, "I was a better strategist?" Young-woo said, "Yes," Seong-hyun said. He said it to me specifically because he wanted me to understand what I was being given and what I was being asked to honor. He said, "Young-woo could run this better than you in the world it is now. You have to run it in the world it will be." A silence. The quality of this silence was different from the previous ones. Less defensive, more open. She did not push. She let them sit in what had just arrived. At the end of the 2 hours, when the session was formally closed and the next one had been scheduled, Young-woo stood to leave and stopped at the door. He turned. He looked at her. "You're good at this," he said. "I had good teachers," she said. He looked at Seong-hyun. Something passed between them. Not resolution, not forgiveness, not the end of anything, but the first glimpse, possibly, of the beginning of something that could lead to those things eventually. Young-woo left. Seong-hyun stood in the conference room and looked at her with the underneath expression, the one she had first seen in the car when she had told him he was tired, and he had not denied it. "How did you know to ask about that day?" he said. "Because that's always a day," she said. In family succession disputes, in business conflicts, in political disagreements, there's always one day, one moment where the fracture happened. Everything that comes after is just a fracture expressing itself in different forms. "And if you find a moment," he said, "then you have something to work with," she said. "You can't undo a moment, but you can acknowledge it. You can say, that day happened, and this is what it cost, and we're still here." That's usually enough to start. He looked at her for a long moment. "You have a way," he said slowly, "of making me believe that the things I've been running from are actually manageable." "They are," she said. "Most things are once you stop running." He moved, not to 3 centimeters closer. More than that, he crossed the room and stood in front of her with the full, direct, nothing managed quality of his presence, and he said, "I want to tell you something." "Tell me," she said. "I haven't." He stopped. He started again with the specific effort of a man who has spent his whole life learning to be precise, and is currently asking himself to be precise about something that has never needed precision before, because it has never been this real. "I haven't trusted anyone who wasn't already inside the network in 11 years, since my mother died. I have managed everyone and everything, and I have done it well, and it has cost me." He paused. "It has cost me the kind of tiredness that doesn't sleep away." She looked at him. "And you walked into a parking garage," he said, "and read a room in 8 seconds and got into a car with a stranger because you thought it was the right thing to do. And then you told me I was tired when nobody said that out loud to me in 11 years. And you helped me hear my cousin in a way that I have not been able to hear him in 18 months. And he stopped. "Seong-hyun," she said. "I know," he said. "I know the complications. I know what this is and what it isn't and what it would require and what," he stopped. "I know all of that. And," she said, "and I'm telling you anyway," he said, "because you told me people who can be reached don't manage what they feel. They say it." She looked at him. This man who had been keeping his mother's promise for 7 years and running a network he was trying to transform and absorbing 3 attempts on his life and still standing up straight and still, somehow, finding the underneath register when the situation deserved it. She was about to say something. She was about to say one of several things, each of which would have been true, and each of which would have managed the distance between them in the careful, professional way she had been managing it. She opened her mouth. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Her mother, from Lagos. Her mother, who only called on Sundays, and it was Thursday. She looked at Seong-hyun. "I'm sorry," she said. "I have to." "Take it," he said, without any visible disappointment, which she suspected cost him something. She stepped away. She answered. Her mother's voice was the voice of a woman who is managing something very large and is not yet sure how large it is. She said, "Dara, it's about Collins." She went still. "What about Collins?" "There's a man," her mother said. "He came to the house today. A Korean man. He said his name was Kong. He said he worked for a company called Pak Capital." Everything in the room became very specific, very clear. The way things become clear when a pattern you have not been looking for suddenly shows itself. "What did he want?" she said. "He said Collins's company, before it was closed, before Collins died, was owed money, a settlement that was never paid. He said the company that owed it had changed hands, and the new owner wanted to." Her mother paused. "He said the new owner wanted to make good on the debt." She stood in the conference room with the phone at her ear, and Seong-hyun behind her, and the Han River visible through the window, and felt the world reorganize itself around a fact she had not known until this moment. Pak Capital, the company attached to the Pak network. The company whose name was the name of the man who had just told her he hadn't trusted anyone in 11 years, and had been trying to say something important when her phone rang. Collins, her uncle Collins, who had run a logistics company in Lagos that had been doing business with Korean partners in the early 2000s. Her uncle Collins, who had died 3 years ago of a heart attack that her aunt had always said came from the stress of the business dissolution. Her Uncle Collins, whose company had been, she had known this vaguely, had known it the way you know things that are painful and not fully resolved, whose company had been pushed into liquidation by a debt that a Korean partner had refused to honor. The Korean partner, she now understood with the specific, cold clarity of a pattern made visible, had been the Pak network under Seong-hyun's father. She stood very still. She finished the call with her mother. She said, "I'll call you tonight. I'll explain what I can." She hung up. She turned around. Seong-hyun was looking at her. He had, in the 30 seconds since she had turned away to take the call, done nothing, had simply stood in the room and waited with the specific quality of a man who has learned that waiting is sometimes the most respectful action available. He looked at her face. His expression changed. "What is it?" he said. She looked at him. She thought about 8 seconds in a parking garage and 2 hours over dinner, and the underneath expression, and the tire that didn't sleep away, and 11 years without trust, and what she had been standing on the edge of saying when the phone rang. She thought about Collins, about the heart attack at 61, about her aunt's voice at the funeral, dry-eyed and furious in the specific way of a woman who has decided that grief can wait until the anger has somewhere to go, about the company that had been 20 years of her uncle's life and had been taken from him not by market forces, but by a partner who had decided that honoring the debt was optional. She said, "Who managed the network's Lagos logistics contracts in 2001 and 2002? He went very still. "Why?" he said. "Because my uncle ran a logistics company in Lagos," she said. "Collins Adeyemi. Adeyemi Logistics. He did business with a Korean partner between 2000 and 2003. The partnership ended badly. The Korean partner refused to honor a settlement. Collins spent the rest of his life managing the consequences. He died 3 years ago." She held his gaze. "And someone from Pak Capital came to my mother's house today to say the debt was going to be honored." The room was very quiet. Seong-hyun was looking at her with an expression she had not seen before, not the managed expression, not the underneath expression, something older, something that had the weight of a man who has been carrying knowledge he doesn't know how to set down and has just been given the opportunity, and is not sure the opportunity is real. "Dara," he said. "Tell me," she said, "the full version." He sat down. She sat across from him. The Han River was silver in the window. The city went on outside. "The Lagos contracts," he said slowly, "were managed by my father, directly, not through the standard network channels. He kept the West African partnerships separate from the main operation, which was unusual for him. I found out why when I went through his records after he died." He paused. He had made commitments that he intended to honor and then had not honored, not because the money wasn't there, because there was a period between 2002 and 2004 when the network was under significant pressure from a rival operation, where he made decisions that prioritized the network's survival over the obligations he had made to external partners. "Collins," she said. "Collins Adeyemi," he said. "Yes, among others. There were 4 Lagos contractors who were owed settlement payments that my father stopped. Collins's was the largest." He looked at his hands. "When I found the records, I was already 2 years into the process of restructuring, moving the network toward legitimate operations. I identified the outstanding debts as part of that process. I've been working through them. Collins's company was the most complicated because the company had closed and Collins had died," she said. "Yes." He looked at her. "I sent the man to your mother's house 2 weeks ago. I didn't know." He stopped. "I didn't know the connection. I didn't know you. I didn't know that the woman from the conference who walked into a parking garage was Collins Adeyemi's niece." She sat with this. She sat with the specific architecture of it, the shape of a thing that had been built in layers over years by people who were not aware they were building toward each other. Her Uncle Collins, who had taught her to read rooms and to stay in them when the right thing required it. Seong-hyun's father, who had made decisions under pressure that had cost Collins' company and eventually, she believed, his health. Seong-hyun, who had inherited those decisions and had been trying, for 2 years, to undo them. And she, who had walked into a parking garage on a Thursday evening and been handed 8 seconds in which to make a decision that had placed her in the middle of all of it. "You knew about the debt," she said, "before we met." "Yes," he said. "And you were going to honor it." "Yes," he said. "I had already started the process." "Without knowing who I was. Without knowing who you were." She looked at him. The full, direct look. Not the professional look. The underneath one. The one she had been maintaining 3 centimeters of distance from for 3 weeks, and which was now, in this conference room with the Han River and the silver light, no longer at a distance at all. "Why?" she said. "Your father made those decisions. The debt is—" She paused. "Legally, there may not even be a—" "It doesn't matter what it is legally," he said, quietly, with the complete, simple certainty of someone who has made a decision and has been at peace with it for some time. Collins Adeyemi built something real. My father took the foundation of it. Whatever I'm trying to build now, whatever my mother asked me to build, it can't be built on a foundation that has that in it. You have to settle what's owed before you can build on clean ground." She looked at him for a long time. She thought about Collins in his office in Lagos, the wall behind his desk covered in maps, trade routes, logistics networks, the specific geography of how things move from place to place in the world. She thought about Collins saying, "Dara, the bystander is never really a bystander." She thought about Collins at the end, thinner and quieter than he should have been at 61, still going into the office every day out of the habit of a man who has built his identity around work and cannot stop even when the work has been taken from him. She thought about 8 seconds in a parking garage. She thought about what it meant that she had been looking for the man at the east pillar and had found, instead, the man in the car, and had gotten in and had stayed. "Seong-hyun," she said. "Yes." Collins would have said, "You're doing the right thing." He looked at her. "Would have said it about me specifically," he said. "Or about the action?" "About you," she said. He was specific about people. He said the action without the person is just mechanics. It's the person that makes the action real. He was very still for a moment. Then, "I would like to have known him." "He would have liked you," she said. He liked people who kept their word, even when it cost him something. He said those people were the only ones worth building anything with. She paused. He would have said, that one's worth the work." They sat in the conference room for a long time after that. Not talking, not needing to talk. The specific quality of silence that arrives when 2 people have said the thing that needed saying, and are now simply in the same room with it, letting it take its shape. At some point, he said, "The 3rd session with Young-woo is next Thursday." "I know," she said. "Will you still?" "Yes," she said. "I said I would. I keep my word." He looked at her. The real smile, the one she had not seen on him until that moment. The decided one, the one that had stopped checking and arrived. "I know you do," he said. The 3rd session with Young-woo happened on Thursday, and was different from the first 2 in the specific way that 3rd sessions are different. The performances have been exhausted. The ritual positions have been taken and abandoned, and what remained was 2 men in a room who were, for the first time in 18 months, actually talking to each other. She asked Young-woo, "If you could design a role for yourself in what the network becomes, not what it is, what it becomes, what would that role be?" Young-woo looked at her, then at Seong-hyun, the resistance she had seen in the first session. The specific, armored quality of a man defending a position he knows he cannot hold but has decided to defend anyway, had softened not into weakness but into something she recognized as the precursor to honesty. "Strategy," Young-woo said, "building the legitimate side. Seong-hyun's better at the transformation, the vision, the direction. I'm better at the mechanics, the actual architecture of how you get from here to there." He looked at the table. "I've known that for 4 years. I've been fighting against it because the mechanics felt like a demotion. And now," she said, "now," Young-woo said slowly, "I've been sitting with what you said, about my uncle saying I was the better strategist. If that's true," he stopped. He looked at Seong-hyun. "If that's actually what he said." "It is," Seong-hyun said, word for word. Young-woo nodded. "Once." The nod of someone who has been waiting for a piece of information for 4 years and has finally received it and is allowing it to land. "Then the mechanics," Young-woo said, "are not a demotion. They're the thing I'm actually good at. And if I'm actually good at them, then you have value," she said. Real value. Not borrowed value from an inheritance. Your own. A silence. Young-woo looked at the table. Something moved through his face that she had seen move through faces in mediation rooms. The specific, complicated movement of a person letting go of a position they had been holding for so long that they had mistaken for identity. "I'll stop," Young-woo said, very quietly, to Seong-hyun. The escalations. "I'll call off Lee Bong-chul and the others. But he paused. I need it to be real. The role, not a concession. A real position." "It's real," Seong-hyun said. "I was going to offer it 6 months ago. I didn't know how to say it without you hearing it as a consolation prize." Young-woo looked at him for a long moment. "For years," he said. "We've been doing this for 4 years, and it started because neither of us knew how to say the actual thing." "Yes," Seong-hyun said. "That's..." Young-woo stopped. He looked at Dara. "That's what you do," he said. "You make people say the actual thing." "That's the job," she said. After the session, in the corridor, Seong-hyun walked with her to the elevator. They stood at the elevator door with the building noise around them and the specific, changed quality of an afternoon that has accomplished something. "It's not finished," she said. "There's still work. The structural changes take time. Young-woo's going to need..." "I know," he said. "But you started it." "You started it," she said. "You started it 4 years ago when you decided you were going to do something different with what you inherited." He looked at her. "You could argue," he said, "that Colin started it, by teaching you to read rooms and stay in them." She smiled. "The real one. You could argue that," she said. The elevator arrived. She moved toward it. He said her name. She stopped. "I'm not going to manage this," he said. "What I'm about to say. I'm going to say it the way you say things. Directly." She turned. She looked at him. "I want to build something," he said. "Not just the network into something legitimate. Something else. Something that has nothing to do with the pack name, or my father, or the territory. Something that's mine." He paused. "And I want..." He stopped. He started again. "My mother used to say that the things worth building are the things you can't build alone." She said, "Find the person who reads rooms the way you wish you could, and build with them." He held her gaze. "I've been looking for that person for 11 years. She looked at him. She thought about Collins. She thought about the parking garage and 8 seconds and getting in the car. She thought about the fact that someone from Pack Capital had been sent to her mother's house to honor a debt before she and Seong-hyun had ever met, and that she had walked into a parking garage on a Thursday evening and changed the geometry of everything that followed. She thought about her grandmother, who had been alive long enough to say, "Dara, the important connections are never accidental. They are built over time by the choices of the people involved and by the choices of the people who came before them. Collins and the Pack Network, her uncle's company, and Seong-hyun's father's decision, and Seong-hyun's decision to undo it. A debt being honored, and a conference, and a wrong jacket at the East Pillar, and 8 seconds of attention that had placed her exactly where she was. Not accidental. Built. Say the rest of it," she said. "The direct version." He took the step between them. The 3 centimeters. The distance she had been maintaining with the professional care of someone who understands what happens when you stop maintaining it. "I love you," he said. "I don't know how long. Since the parking garage. Maybe since you told me I was tired. Maybe since the 3rd session or the 4th, or the moment you said Collins would have liked me. I don't know when it started. I know it's true." She looked at him. The underneath expression. The man who had been keeping his mother's promise for 7 years and running a network he was transforming and absorbing the cost of 3 attempts and still, somehow, having the underneath expression available. The one that said, "This is real. I am not managing this. This is a real thing. I love you back," she said. That's the direct version. He looked at her for a moment. Then he laughed. The real laugh. The unguarded one. The kind that arrives when someone's been held for a long time and has finally found its release. The kind that makes a person look like exactly who they are without any of the architecture. It was a very good laugh. She filed it. She intended to hear it again. The 4th session with Young-woo was different from all the previous ones. She had asked Seong-hyun not to attend. This had required a conversation. He had the instinct of a man who is accustomed to being present at everything that concerns him, and asking him to absent himself from a session about his own future was not a small ask. But she had explained, "There are things Young-woo needs to say that he will not say with you in the room. There are things he needs to hear himself say. The work of the fourth session is not about what you two say to each other. It's about what Young-woo says to himself." Seong-hyun had understood. He had said, "I trust you," which was, she recognized, the sentence that had taken him 11 years to be ready to say to anyone. Young-woo arrived at the fourth session looking different. Not visibly different. The same face, the same clothes, the same bearing. But she had learned, in 8 years of mediation rooms, to read the difference between a person who is inhabiting the same body and a person who has decided something in the interval between sessions and is carrying the decision into the room. Young-woo had decided something. She sat across from him. She said, "What do you want to say today?" He looked at her. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what you said. The thing I was actually fighting for. Recognition, not power." "Yes," she said. "I've been sitting with that for a week," he said. "And I want to tell you something that I haven't told anyone, including Seong-hyun." "Tell me," she said. "I knew," Young-woo said. "A year ago, I knew that the network had to change. I've known for longer, honestly. I can read the direction the world is moving, and the world is moving away from the kind of operation my uncle built. And I knew that Seong-hyun was right about the transformation, and I was wrong to oppose it." He looked at his hands. "But I couldn't stop, because stopping would have meant admitting that I had been fighting the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. And that felt..." He stopped. "Impossible," she said. "Yes," he said. "It felt like erasing 3 years of myself." "It doesn't erase them," she said. "It recontextualizes them. You were fighting for the wrong thing. Yes. But what you learned while fighting, the strategy, the networks, the understanding of the operation, that's real. That doesn't go away. You can take all of it with you into the new version." Young-woo was quiet for a moment. "My uncle believed that," he said, "about me. He genuinely believed I was capable of the mechanics of something better." He looked up. "I've been so angry at him for not choosing me that I never let myself sit with the fact that he thought I was good enough to build the better thing. He just needed someone else to decide what the better thing was." "Yes," she said. "That's..." He stopped. He looked at the table. When he looked up, his face had the specific, strange quality of face that has just been relieved of something it has been holding for longer than it knew. "That changes it," he said. "The story I've been telling myself about that day. It changes the story." "What's the new story?" she said. He thought about this. He took his time. She let him. "The new story," he said slowly, "is that my uncle saw 2 different kinds of capability and understood that they needed different roles, and made the right call, and I was too hurt to see it for 4 years. He paused. "And now I can see it. And now I can," he stopped. "Build," she said. "Yes," he said. "Now I can build." After the session, she called Seong-hyun. She said, "It's done. Not finished. Done." Young-woo is ready to move forward. A silence on the phone. The specific quality of someone absorbing something they've been working toward for a long time and have not yet fully believed would arrive. "What did you say to him?" Seong-hyun asked. "I didn't say much," she said. "I asked him what he wanted to say. Most of the work was his." "You made it safe enough for him to do his own work," Seong-hyun said. "That's the job," she said. "That's always the job." She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. She could feel, through the phone, the specific quality of his relief. Not the relief of a problem solved, but the deeper relief of a weight that has been structural for 18 months beginning, finally, to redistribute itself. "Dara," he said. "Yes." "Thank you," he said. "Not for the session." He stopped. "He found it. For being the kind of person who gets in the car." She smiled. She thought about Collins. About the bystander who is never really a bystander. About the room and the people in it and the choice to stay. "Thank Collins," she said. "He taught me to get in the car." A pause. "Then I owe Collins a debt too," Seong-hyun said. "On top of the one we're already settling." "He'd say the best way to pay it," she said, "is to build something worth building." "Then we build," he said. "Then we build," she said. She stepped into the elevator. He stepped in with her. The door closed. The city moved around them. Outside the glass, the specific luminous density of Seoul in the evening, all light and intention, and the sound of a place that does not stop for anything. Collins would have said, she told him, as the elevator descended, that the building starts on Monday. Then we start on Monday, he said. And before Monday, she said. He looked at her, the real smile, the one that had stopped checking. Before Monday, he said, we have tonight. She looked at him. She thought about her Uncle Collins, who had spent his last years watching the thing he built come apart, and had never stopped believing, even then, that the building was worth it. She thought about rooms and the people who stay in them, and the 30-year bridges that connect families across the distance they don't know they're crossing. She thought about 8 seconds in a parking garage. She took his hand. His grip was steady. The grip of a man who holds things carefully. Tonight, she said. The elevator reached the ground floor. They walked out into the Seoul evening together. Into the city that doesn't stop. The city that holds every kind of life simultaneously. The city where a man had heard a voice in a parking structure 1 level below him, and a woman had read a room in 8 seconds, and a debt that had been owed for 20 years was finally, truly being paid. Not in money, not in the settlement that was going to be delivered to her mother's house in Lagos in the coming weeks, though that too was real and necessary and long overdue. In the specific, irreducible currency of 2 people who have found each other in the rooms they were each, separately, trying to stay in and have decided, with full knowledge of the complications and the history and the cost, to build something in the same room. Collins would have said, that's the whole business. The room and the people in it and the choice to stay. She would have agreed with him. She did agree with him. She agreed with him in the Seoul evening, walking with the man she loved into the city that was continuing, as it always did, without stopping for anything. Not for small things, and not for large ones, and not for this, which was both at once, which is the beginning of everything that mattered. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This is where their story starts.